That morning, I was tending the roses in my garden, unaware of what life had in store for me. My hands were buried in the soil, checking the roots of the saplings I had just planted. Everything was normal and quiet, just like any other day, until a sharp pain shot through my back. I had no idea what was about to happen, especially as my step-nephew Taylor happened to be there. My garden had always been my sanctuary, my escape. After my husband Grant died, it became the one place that truly healed my soul. But on this day, everything felt different. I was 67, but people often said, "Nora, how do you manage to look so youthful at your age?" Honestly, there was no big secret. I just took care of myself, a healthy diet, regular exercise, and a determination to never lose the young woman inside me. But I'll admit, loneliness had sunk deep into my soul. My beauty might still attract attention, but inside there was an emptiness I couldn't shake. As I positioned one of the saplings, a sudden pain shot through my back. It was so sharp and unexpected that I dropped everything I was holding. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to breathe through the pain, but it didn't help. The pain spread from my shoulder down my back, freezing me in place, unable to move. Then, out of nowhere, I heard Taylor's voice. "Nora, are you okay?" My step-nephew Taylor, 22 years old, broad shoulders, muscular build, and the kind of face you'd see on a magazine cover. His blonde hair shimmered in the sunlight, and his piercing eyes looked at me with concern. He had that natural charm, the kind that caught everyone's attention, even if he didn't seem to realize it himself. And now all that youthful energy seemed to be focused on helping me. "My back," I managed to say, pointing to the spot where the pain was at its worst. "Something's wrong. I can't move." "Are you ready for this? Because this isn't just another story. This is a journey where boundaries blur, emotions tangle, and confessions linger like silent screams. Every moment could stir something inside you, pushing the boundaries of what you thought you knew. If this sounds like your kind of story, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to support me." Taylor crouched down beside me. "Let me help you," he said. I felt an involuntary shiver run through me as his big hands touched my shoulders. "I'll give you a massage. It usually helps," he added. I didn't have the strength to protest. I was ready to try anything to ease the pain. But what really surprised me was the effect his touch had on me. Taylor put his hands on my back and began to press gently. I had to admit, I hadn't felt this kind of closeness in years. His fingers were strong but surprisingly gentle as they moved over my tense muscles. The pain slowly faded, replaced by a strange warmth that spread through me. It was as if the lonely woman inside me had suddenly been awakened. I let out a breath, maybe a little too deep. "Taylor?" I started to say, but the words got stuck in my throat. I couldn't finish. He didn't say anything either, just kept massaging. His hands slid down my back in a way that made me hyper-aware of every touch. At that moment, I felt something shift, and it frightened and excited me in ways I wasn't prepared for. Taylor continued to work his hands down my back, steady and deliberate, until he suddenly stopped and leaned closer to look at me. "Nora, this is really bad," he said, his voice serious and worried. "We can't fix it out here in the garden. Let's get you inside near the fire. The heat will help, and I'll get some ointment to rub on your back. We've got to take care of this." I hesitated for a second, but the pain made the decision for me. I nodded, and he helped me to my feet. "Careful, take it slow," he said, his strong hand supporting me. There was something strangely comforting about the way he held me, a closeness I hadn't felt in years. When we got inside, the crackling fire filled the room with a warm, golden glow. The heat wrapped itself around me like a blanket, instantly relieving the tension in my body. Taylor quickly spread a blanket on the floor and motioned for me to lie down. "You need to stretch your back into a more comfortable position," he said, his eyes serious but with a flicker of hesitation. I've got some cream. It'll help loosen the muscles. I lay down and felt the warmth of the fire seep into me as Taylor rubbed the cream between his hands to warm it. The first touch of his hand on my shoulders made me let out a breath I didn't even realize I was holding. Just relax, he said quietly. You'll feel better in no time. But every touch of his hands did more than ease my physical pain. It stirred something inside me, something I thought I'd buried long ago. As his fingers moved down my back, my thoughts became both clearer and more chaotic. Taylor's touch wasn't just healing, it was awakening. I hesitated for a moment, but the pain was too much, so I quickly accepted. Taylor took my arm gently and helped me to my feet. Take it slow, be careful, he said. As his strong hands wrapped around me almost completely, I felt a strange sense of security. This young man's protectiveness gave me a closeness I hadn't felt in years. As we entered the house, the flames in the fireplace painted the room in a warm orange glow. The crackle of the fire and the heat that filled the room instantly relaxed me. Taylor quickly spread a blanket on the floor and motioned for me to lie down. You need to relax your back into a more comfortable position, he said, his eyes still serious, but flickering with something softer. I also brought some cream. This will soften the muscles. I lay down, feeling the warmth envelop my body, and Taylor squeezed the cream into his hand, rubbing it between his palms to warm it. The first touch of his hands on my shoulder made me gasp. Relax, he said quietly. You'll feel better now. But with each touch, I could feel something changing. His hands weren't just giving me physical relief, they were stirring up emotions I'd buried for years. As his fingers moved down my back, my thoughts were soothed, but also confused. Taylor's. The touch was slow but sure, going deeper both physically and emotionally. No wonder your muscles are so tense, he said, his voice carrying a warmth that caught my attention. You take on too much, Nora. The garden, the housework. You need to think of yourself too. I tried to explain. The garden is my therapy, Taylor. Without it. I know, he interrupted, his touch softening a little. But you need more than the garden. You need someone, a person, someone to care for you. His words warmed me even more than the fire, but they also made me uneasy. I didn't fully understand what he meant, or maybe I did, but I didn't want to accept it at that moment. His hands moved down my back, continuing the massage. The warmth of his touch loosened the tight spots, but inside it created another kind of knot. Being so close to him felt both comforting and terrifying. Taylor, I finally said, my voice trembling, you're really helping, but… I know, he said, his voice slower this time, but everything's going to be fine. Just relax, Nora. I could feel that his words were more than just advice. Like the flames of the fire, his presence grew closer with each passing second. Taylor's hands slid gently down my back. As each muscle loosened at his touch, a strange sense of unease began to take hold of me. His warmth moved deeper, slowly but determinedly. It was then that my mind began to cloud, and an inner struggle was born. Nora, stay calm, I told myself, but I couldn't control myself. As his warm hands moved lower, closer to my shoulders, my heart began to pound. On the one hand, it was Taylor's closeness. On the other, the boundaries that years had put in place. Suddenly, the voice inside me screamed loudly, "He's your step-nephew, Nora! You shouldn't do this." The fire had filled the room with a warm light, but after a while, the heat became unbearable. When I saw Taylor wiping the sweat from his brow, my eyes couldn't help but wander over to him. Suddenly, he pulled up the bottom of his shirt and lifted it off. His muscular, sun-kissed body glowed in the firelight, almost like a sculpture. It's hard to describe what I felt at that moment. I hadn't felt this close to anyone in years. "This heat from the fire is too much," he said, dropping his shirt to the ground. His tone was casual, but the depth in his gaze made me freeze. Then his eyes met mine. "Nora, you're getting really hot too," he said, his voice soft but firm. You'll feel worse if you keep that shirt on. Let me help you. My words caught in my throat. I thought about fighting back, but the warmth on my skin and the temperature of the room had become unbearable. Slowly, I nodded. Taylor knelt beside me and reached for the hem of my shirt. I felt his warm hands against my skin. The touch made me shiver, but it wasn't cold. It was a kind of heat. He carefully pulled my shirt up, working it gently around my hair, and finally took it off and set it aside. At that moment, the air between us became thicker. His eyes lingered on me for a second, before he quickly turned his head away. Still, I didn't need to see his face to know the chaos those looks caused inside me. Nora, Taylor said, his voice deeper and softer than before. Do you feel better now? I think so, I replied, my voice cracking. My words couldn't hide the storm inside me. It wasn't just the heat, it was the warmth from Taylor's presence that enveloped me. Come on, he said, holding out his hand. Let's sit on the couch. You're uncomfortable here. I took his hand. The moment our fingers touched, I felt an electricity I hadn't felt in years. As he helped me to my feet, his strong arms held me steady. For a moment, Taylor's protective nature felt so clear, so natural, that the fears inside me began to melt away. When we reached the couch, he sat me down gently. He sat next to me immediately, but made sure there was enough space between us. Still, the tension in the room hadn't gone away. There was something unspoken between us, but it was so hard, maybe impossible, to put into words. Trying not to get lost in the depth of his gaze, I fought to suppress the turmoil inside me. But one thing was clear. Tonight, it was almost impossible to deny the weight of our feelings. After we sat down, the silence between us was deepened by the crackling of the fire. My heart was beating so fast in my chest that I could almost hear it. Taylor sitting next to me, his presence, even his breath, affected me. Being so close to him made me feel both nervous and strangely at peace. I turned my head for a moment, and our eyes met. There was something in his gaze, perhaps curiosity, perhaps something deeper. In this closeness, it was impossible to ignore the look in his eyes. Deep, intense, but also gentle. In that moment, it felt as if the world had stopped. Taylor slowly reached out his hand for mine. When his fingers touched mine, a shiver ran through me. He didn't say anything, but there was so much in the silence. His gaze lingered on my lips for a second, and in that moment, everything changed. He leaned slowly towards me. He was so close, his breath left a warmth on my skin. The voices inside me stopped. There was no more right or wrong. At that moment, there was only Taylor. Eyes and his closeness to me, I closed my eyes and leaned in just a little toward him. When our lips met, it felt like time had stopped. The first touch was gentle, soft, and exploratory. But within seconds, that gentleness turned into something more intense. His warmth, his breath, the feel of his lips, everything seemed detached from reality. The loneliness, fear, and longing that had built up inside me were somehow merging with him in that moment. This wasn't just a kiss. It was the expression of years of bottled-up emotions, suppressed desires, and maybe even a hidden bond. As the kiss deepened, his hands gently roamed over my cheeks. My hands instinctively gripped his shoulders, the warmth of his skin radiating through my palms. Finally, we both pulled away at the same time. When our eyes met, our breaths were uneven, but the bond between us felt stronger than ever. Was there anything to say? I wasn't sure. But one thing was clear. Tonight, nothing between us would ever be the same. After the kiss, I realized I was breathless. My heart was pounding like it was about to burst out of my chest. When I looked into Taylor's eyes, I saw both a question and a deep desire. In that moment, my mind went completely quiet. My heart and body were the ones making the decisions now. I said, my voice shaky but my feelings clear. Yes, I want you. I want you. The words left my lips, and something inside me snapped. The loneliness and fears I carried for years seemed to melt away in an instant. All that mattered was being here, right here, with him in this moment. Taylor's face showed a brief flash of surprise, but then a slow smile spread across his face. The expression in his eyes mirrored the warmth that surrounded me. I want you too, Nora, he said, his voice both soft and firm. I've tried to hold back, but I can't anymore. I want you. I want to be with you. His words rippled through me like waves, each word touching my heart. Taylor gently cupped my face in his hands and moved closer to me again. This time, there was no hesitation. We both knew what we wanted. When his lips met mine again, the intensity of our feelings was beyond words. That moment was a turning point for me. Taylor's presence, his warmth, his words, despite all my fears. I didn't want to stop anything now. I hadn't stopped anything. I had completely let myself go with the flow of my emotions. Now, with nothing but a thin sheet over us, breathless and intertwined, Taylor lay next to me with a small smile on his face. I looked up at the ceiling and saw our shirts and trousers scattered on the floor. The night felt so surreal, like a dream. Taylor turned to face me, that captivating smile still on his face. His hand gently touched my cheek, his thumb briefly brushing my lips. Nora, he said, his voice deep and soft. I wouldn't trade this moment for anything. I turned to him, filled with the mixed emotions that still ran through me, and said in a voice full of gratitude, Thank you, Taylor. I haven't felt so alone in a long time. But you being so tall, young, and handsome, I really like it. I had no intention of hiding the sincerity and gratitude in my eyes. Taylor's lips curved upwards, his trademark charming smile spreading across his face. Nora, do you know how beautiful you are? He said. And I'm not just talking about your looks. Being with you is a completely different feeling. Your warmth, your sincerity, everything. You make me feel better. I couldn't take my eyes off his. His words, his touch. Everything was so real and powerful that I wanted to remember that night forever. I needed you, Taylor, I said honestly, and you were here. I couldn't have asked for more. Taylor smiled slightly and ran his fingers along the edge of the sheets. I'm going to come here a lot, Nora. From now on, whenever you need me, I'll be here, he said, his voice carrying a tone of determination and sincerity. Just to see you, just to give you those moments. At that moment, I felt a new door opening in my life. The burdens and loneliness of the past were slowly disappearing behind me. Having Taylor by my side filled me with a deep sense of trust and peace. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and moved closer to his warmth. That night was just the beginning for me, the first steps of a new journey. And knowing that I wasn't alone anymore was more precious than anything. I hope you enjoyed my story. It's been a really exciting journey, and I'm so happy to share it with you. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. Turn on notifications, and you'll be the first to know when a new episode is released. Also, your likes and comments mean the world to me. Hearing what you think and how you feel really motivates me. Your support makes me want to write more. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next story.